care now. Okay, for the next portion of our and segment of our day, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you my dear friend and colleague. She's Jeannie Maddox. She's going to be the moderator for today for the global panel, and she's formerly from Colgate. She was an executive there and the president of the New York, New Jersey Minority Development Council. So please give her a nice round of applause, Jeannie Maddox. Now, we also like to introduce to you the panel. The panel that's going to be up here today is Diane Ashley. She's former Federal Reserve Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Please give Diane a nice warm welcome. Next, we'd like to bring up Morgan Vasquez, who's the Global Head Campus Recruiting and Emerging Talent at BNY Mellon. Morgan. Lastly, we were having Jessica Palacios from BLACKROCK. She's the global head of U.S. campus recruitment at BLACKROCK, but she prefers to be on the CEO fireside chat, so she sent in her place a colleague that, I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
Claudia Suarez.
Claudia, please join the panel.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We need some new energy in this room. So I want everybody to stand up, okay? Stretch out, shake out a little bit, okay? I want you to be your unique selves in this room, okay? I want you to open up. I want you to ask questions. I want you to be your authentic self in this room, okay? Everybody has a personality. Even though you're all in black suits, you're not all black suits, right? Everybody has a different personality. Everybody has a different way in which you work, how you present yourself, and I think we're going to see some of that today. You can all sit down. I just want you to shake up, get some of that energy out, because sometimes we sit so long and we're just so focused that we don't allow ourselves to just free up so we can be in the room, so we can be a part of the questions that are going to be coming to the front, or the energy that you have that you want to share with us. So I just want to make one slight correction, because if the president of New York, New Jersey was here, he'd be a little insulted because I'm not the president. I was the chairman of the board. So he had to report to me, but he was, he was the president. I was just the chairman. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that out. But I do thank all of you for being here. We have a very astute and very bright panel here. And I'm going to allow each of them to share their titles with you, as well as a little story about themselves, so that you know who you're talking to when you address them with questions, okay? So we'll start with Diane.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Awake? Okay, good. You know, one of the things I have to say, I spent about 25 years plus in the financial services world, and I got to tell you, it may have been an effort, but it's great to see all of you dressed for business. You know, why do I say that? Because, you know what, if you're going to be looking for roles in certain parts of corporate America, it still counts. Unless you're working for Microsoft. It's a little bit different. Or Google. But in Wall Street, on the tech sector, that's California, even the tech sector here in New York, though. If you're looking at Cisco in New York, you may have to dress as you're dressing today. So it's a great discipline to learn. Okay, let me give you a little bit about me. Okay, thank you, Jeannie. And first of all, let me say thank you to Monica and Miguel. I've known them for probably over 15 years. And I think Skip has done an outstanding job of really bringing all of you to corporate America, giving you an opportunity to meet others and building your network. And that's what my career has been about. As was introduced, I just retired in May from 12 years at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. I was a chief diversity officer. What I did there actually was, you know, I was actually, for those of you who are a little bit older in the room may remember the Great Recession, 2008, 9, 10. I came aboard in 2007 when Tim Geithner was president of the New York Fed. For those of you who are good people that know your history, he became our Treasury Secretary under Obama. But when I joined the bank in 2007, my mandate was to start a whole Office of Diversity and Inclusion. They'd never done that at the Federal Reserve. So I worked in the startup role. Very exciting. It was an opportunity really to bring this whole notion of looking at talent in a different way. Prior to that, I worked for 10 years previous, and that's where I met Jeannie in the Mencibos with Citigroup. So, you know, I've had the opportunity to work on the corporate side and on the not-for-profit side, public-private partnerships. I can talk to you about what that means. It's a little bit different, mission-driven versus corporate-driven in terms of culture. Prior to that, I worked in the executive search world as a recruiter, search consultant. So this was helpful for me from the standpoint of looking for people like you and more senior executives. And one of the things that I learned in that role, and here's one thing I will say to all of you, as you move in your roles, don't feel badly if you're changing careers. I've changed careers like 3 to 5 times. It's not a bad thing. What you need to do, though, is leverage it. You can learn from every environment, good and bad. It's something you can learn from something. If at the very least it's like, oh, I'll never do that wherever I'm going. I'll never work like that boss, he's crazy. So there's something you can learn in every environment. But working in the search world, if any of you have talked to people that are recruiters and working in the executive search world, what you learn very quickly in that world is 2 things. One is you learn how to assess a culture rapidly. The other thing you learn how to do is you learn how to create good judgment about candidates. Anybody in here is a recruiter? Anybody? Any recruiters? Okay. These are the people you've got to impress, because they'll size you up in about 30 seconds. You know, you may have a 2-hour interview. Am I wrong? No. Yeah, I know. And they'll tell you, like, you know what, this person's on, this person's off, what's going on with that. So my point of it is, you know, my career has been one where I have really tried to learn how to take the skills that I have, which is working with people and love of working for people, and learning how to pay it forward. I don't know, Jeannie, you want educational background? You want educational background? For me? Oh, okay. Educational background. So my background's a little bit. Undergrad, Yale University, master's degree, Boston University, law degree, Rutgers. So whoever's from Rutgers, there you go. So I'm on the Rutgers Board of Advisors for the MBA program. So I would love to talk to you maybe afterwards, but I certainly wish you all the best.
Relationships.
Absolutely. So you heard a bit about my background, so I won't go too detailed, but I think there's an important story from it. So as mentioned, I was recruited when I was a high school senior to JP Chase's Smart Start program. Had no idea what I was getting myself into, and trust me, like, I thought I was going to be a teller at a bank when they first came and said they had this opportunity at JP Morgan, but I did know that they were going to pay for my education, and if I had to go get somebody coffee for 4 years, I was going to do it. I came from a family, neither of my parents went to college. My mom was a cop in the NYPD for 31 years, and my dad owned a small business, so just kind of fell into this opportunity, and I knew I wanted to stay local, but still be able to have the college experience by dorming. So checked out some schools within the New York City area, fell in love with Fordham. Is anyone? I don't think there's anyone from Fordham because I stalk the list to see if there was. Okay, but I went to Fordham. I double majored in sociology and communications while working at JP Morgan. So there was 10 of us as part of my cohort in the Smart Start program. The 9 others were very investment banking focused. They were the guys and girls that were sleeping under their desks for 2 hours a day while I was working on cookbooks and walk-in clubs for their HR and wellness department. So the story 1 there is don't fall into the trap of doing something you don't want to do just because it's the norm of doing it, right? And I was in the room when the last question was asked about front office, and that's great, right? You may know what you want to do, but don't do a front office role because you think A, that's where the money is, or B, that's because what people are telling you to do, right? So I think that was the biggest lesson for me was it was very easy for me to say, oh, I guess I should be an investment banker, let me find that path. But no, I loved what I was doing in HR, and I kind of just explored different areas to come to the role that I was in today. So fast forward, did that for 4 years as the internship program. When I graduated from Fordham, I went into their HR rotational analyst program, did that for 2 years, and then relationships and networking. My boss at the time, when I was about to leave my analyst program, left JP Chase to become the global head of talent at BNY Mellon, and said, hey Morgan, their campus programs need a lot of work for a bank that's been around 235 years. there wasn't much of a campus program or presence at all. Would you like to come over and head up the campus programs team at BNY Mellon? And I was 22 at the time, and I said, that's interesting. I just left my analyst program, and now I have the opportunity at 22 to go and build up a function. And I said yes in a heartbeat, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Leaving JP Morgan was one of the hardest decisions I made because I built relationships that you can still maintain, including I used to work with Palacios. She's still one of my really good friends. Had the opportunity to really think about what was best for my career. So in August of 2015, I took 3 months off between jobs, which is great to travel and explore. I just hit my 50th country last month, so really excited. Really something passionate about me to get that whole global perspective, which of course will play into diversity, but been there 4 years, just moved into this role as global head of campus back in February. So still relatively new, but my team, like I said earlier, runs all intern, analyst, and associate programs globally, about 600 hires per year at both the intern and analyst level. So really excited to be here, but again, key takeaway, find what you want to do. Say yes if you don't have a reason to say no. I had no reason to say no to that opportunity, and it landed me. I think I have the greatest job in the world. So really excited to be here with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Claudia Suarez. I work on the BLACKROCK campus recruiting team. A little bit about me, I didn't have a normal path to where I am now, but so I went to Queens College in Queens, New York. Born and raised in Queens, so I'm a native New Yorker. I majored in media studies and communications, minored in sociology, so really thought that I wanted to work in TV and media, and that was where I wanted to be. I interned at NBC during college. Also during college, simultaneously, I was working full-time at Citi Field to pay for college as a supervisor during the season and the off-season as well. So I was, I kind of dabbled in hospitality and food and beverage while also working in the media industry as well. Once I graduated, I had an epiphany and decided I did not want to pursue either, hospitality nor media, and really decided to kind of self-reflect and, determine what skills have I acquired over the last 4 years and what would be transferable into a new industry. And so for me, human resources seemed like the perfect fit, dealing with high-profile clients, working under pressure, knowing how to manage your time. All of these things I feel like I had already learned, and to a certain extent during my college years. And so I applied to JP Morgan for an administrative assistant role on the campus recruiting team about 6 years ago. And so slowly worked my way up into a campus recruiter role and left after 5 years last year. And then I joined BLACKROCK in July of last year. So non-quintessential pathway to where I am now, but it just goes to show, exposure to different industries can really open your eyes to see, where your strengths lie and what skills could be applicable to another industry.
Wonderful. I think you just heard a great deal of information about the three panelists, and I'm sure as you heard them speak, you have been formulating questions in your mind. How many of you in the audience are working today? Okay. And how many of you are still in school? The majority? Okay. And let's see, how many of you are graduate students? Undergrad? Okay, so we have a nice mixture. So I think you'll probably have different questions for the panelists based on where you are today. However, I do want to start out with one, and you may have experienced some of this. By the way, I went to Pace University. Anybody from Pace? Pace in the house. But anyway, anybody went to Dartmouth? Okay, all right, but in any event, okay, so we have some questions, and I want to make sure we make most use of the time of the panelists, of the astute, educated panelists we have, because they have a lot to share. But some of the questions we came up with, I wanted to know, as well as I'm sure you will want to know, because some of you are looking for jobs. As students, I'm going to say, what should they be doing to stay relevant in today's marketplace? Because yesteryear there were some ways and things that we had to do, and today you're looking at some things a little differently. So how does the folks in the audience need to remain relevant or understand what's relevant in today's marketplace? as they go out looking for employment, or if they're in employment still today. Because sometimes we get in there and we're doing things in ways that they're no longer using. And we need to say, how do we stay relevant? So you want to start in the middle?
Sure.
Okay.
So I think there's a few things. One is, thank you. One is what I said earlier, is asking questions to the right people. That's super important. I think the second is reading. I know you're all in school, so you probably read a ton and you're like, I can't read again. But just knowing what's happening, whether it's for a specific company, a specific industry, especially within financial services that moves quicker than anybody can imagine, you need to understand what's happening, and not just at the surface level, right? We don't expect you to come into an interview or a conversation knowing everything, but being able to talk the talk at the basic level is going to be really important. And stay up to date, especially before an interview, on what's happening. We have a new CEO, right? I don't know, hopefully somebody in this room knows. Charlie Sharp, our former CEO, left last Friday. I had an interview with the candidate yesterday, and they talked about Charlie. That's great. Charlie no longer works at BNY Mellon. So sure, I'm happy that you want to work at a company that Charlie leaves, then go to Wells Fargo, because that's where he's now the CEO. So those types of things that are very easily accessible on any media outlet, something that I picked up on. And I'm like, okay, well, if this person over the course of the week didn't just spend at least 5 minutes trying to find the key information about my company, why is it worth the time? So ask questions when you're able to, but most importantly, read and be aware, not just from a company perspective, but also within the industry.
Thanks. And just to underscore that, first of all, how many of you read the Wall Street Journal? Everybody should. I don't care where you're working. Why? Because you need to go know what's going on in the marketplace. You need to walk into an organization, and if it's a for-profit organization, you should know what the stock price is. You should know what it's done for the last 90 days. You need to know what the company is going through. One of the things, that was a good example about the CEO that has left, because nothing is worse than walking into an interview and having all information. The other thing I think that you should do is, in terms of staying relevant to your question, Jeannie, you all who are, and I think most of you are what? Gen Z, millennials, I guess, majority? You're like 50% of the workforce now. You're digital natives. I hope that you are up to speed, because any organization hiring you is going to expect you to be a digital native. You should know what's going on in AI. You should know what's going on in terms of your culture that you're looking at. You should have looked at places like Glassdoor. You should have looked at the Vault. You want to understand. These are sites that can tell you a little bit about the inside story on culture that you're looking at. The other thing, too, I would recommend is you think about interviewing, get behind the job description. Not enough to go up on a website and say, oh, New York Fed, oh, they're looking for a person that's an analyst. Guess what? We have hundreds of analysts there. You need to go in and find out what's going on in that business, what have been the challenges. If you can, see if you can find somebody to talk to who works in the organization or who worked in the organization. Because that will just give you so much of a leg up in terms of understanding the organization. You heard me say earlier that I used to work in the search business, and I used to have kind of a joke. Because if I were working on like 6 assignments and they're looking for VPs of marketing, I couldn't swap the candidates out from one company to another, because every company has its own culture. And so what works at JP Morgan Chase may not work at Bank of New York, may not work at Citigroup, may not work at BlackRock. You've got to understand that. It makes a really big difference. And as you start to find that out, I'm a big believer in like working to your strength. Don't work to your deficit. Work to what you do well, because what you like is what you'll do well. So start to think about it from that perspective.
I just have one last comment, and then I'll give it to you, buddy, around that piece on staying relevant in courses. 95% of you are still in school. You have these courses accessible to you. So if you're a math major, you're an English major, you're a history major, go take an entry-level computer science class. That's super impressive. 1, it's going to come a long way in your interview, but 2, you're going to have the basic skills for it. Okay, it might be really challenging, but it's going to be an opportunity for you to just say, okay, I took the extra step to take a class on innovation, to take a class on AI, to take a class in computer science. Those are skills that no matter what you're doing, like there's sometimes in my job in HR, I wish I knew how to code just basic information, and I don't, right? So now I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe I need to take an online class to just have some basic, like rudimentary knowledge of it, and I think all of you are in situations where you can really take advantage of that.
Yep, and I also would echo both of the panelists here. I would also like to add that in addition to reading up on what's going on in the markets and, looking on the website and reading up on the job description. It's also important to be really well versed on the company's mission and principles because, that will vary, depending on which company you're interviewing with. And guaranteed an interviewer very well may ask you, if we were to bring you into the company or hire you, what could you contribute to the company's mission, the company's principles. So be really well versed on that. I would also say that, a great resource is LinkedIn. I know at BLACKROCK particularly, we really welcome candidates to go on LinkedIn and search any current employees that, went to their alma mater and, that's a great way to establish a connection. That's a great way to get an inside scoop on what's going on at BLACKROCK, what the different business areas look like, and it's a great way to prep for an interview. I think Ty had mentioned before that was a way that he had his introduction to BLACKROCK, so it's very beneficial and very helpful.
So, being that you grew up in an era where the whole issue of the internet was kind of seamless, it wasn't a new thing you had to learn, you were born knowing it, right? I have to pause and say, look, you have to also understand that the internet is worldwide and it's unforgiving. So I'm saying that to say, if you are out in the job market, be mindful that everything that you post is discoverable. So, you had that great party and you were wearing a lampshade, that's going to be found out. Recruiters now do things like look on your Facebook site, they look on your Instagram, and they will sometimes make a decision that, oh, you know what, this person's background or their personal life doesn't really jive with what we're looking for a candidate. So, you need to be mindful about that because everything can be found, and recruiters are looking for that kind of stuff. So, again, think about what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think on that note, again, I'm just piggybacking all over the place. Two things. One is coming from the daughter of an NYPD detective. She knew everything about my social media, even though it was private. Things aren't private. Heads up. But also just to think about what I said earlier about the person sitting next to you can be your boss in 5 years. I now have friends from they were friends in high school. I mean, things happen. But I have people that I went to high school with that are reaching out now about jobs. And I remember those pictures, right? I remember the things they said or the Facebook wars and arguments they started about politics or this and that. So the person that's just your friend, oh, I have nobody that can ever help me get an internship right now, they might have very well connections when they come 10, 15 years from now, and you don't want to be that person. As I had that situation, someone reached out and I was like, yeah, I remember when we were in the 2016 election, like what you said on social media. Am I going to refer you for a job? No. And you thought it was private and it was only friends, but now look, it's coming back to bite you. So just be really mindful of that.
Great, great. I hope you're taking notes, everybody. So, we talked about what's relevant, what needs to be relevant. But then Dawn actually mentioned this, Dawn Perez on the phone, and I want you guys to expand on this a little bit too. Because there are skills which are hard, and then there are soft skills. And some of us need to really understand the soft skills, interpersonal skills, dealing with people, all that kind of stuff, how and what we say, and how, language today is different from your friends to what it is when we speak to someone corporately. So let's address that, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important that as you're, applying to different jobs, you're kind of assessing, depending on the role, what soft skills or hard skills are going to be applicable to that role. So, specifically, I think of myself personally when I wanted to, venture into a career in HR. I admittedly and self-reflected and knew that I, had some work to do with my public speaking. So I enrolled in courses to address that and to help that. And that was 5 years ago now, and I'm so glad that I did that because I have been in many situations and many settings where I've had to speak in front of senior leaders and vice chairmen, and had I not taken those courses, I think it would have not set me up for success. So it's okay to self-reflect and notice that maybe you do have some weaknesses at this time, but it's important to address that and really fix that so that you are able to set yourself up for success in the future.
So I'll give you a scenario and then I'll talk about the reason why. So if I have two candidates in front of me and one person is a rock star, hard skill, technical person, but can't speak a sentence to me, and the next person comes in, they have that genuine persona that we talked about, they have the aptitude, they have the determination, I am 1,000 times going with that second candidate. And the reason is, you can teach someone who's smart and someone who's committed how to do anything. I genuinely believe that. What you can't always teach is someone who isn't willing to step out of their zone to at least try to learn. I think about those late nights when it's 10, 11 o'clock at night and I'm with my team and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's our core school strategy going to be next year? Or we're on campus all week and Friday nights at 8 p.m. is the only time we can have a team meeting to gather. Is it going to be that person that's just going to be blah, that negative energy, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, they're not contributing? Or am I gonna wanna be around someone that's like, hey, we got this, yes, let's do it. Oh, we don't know how to do that? I'll pick that up, I'll learn, I'll do that. So I think those soft skills, they don't have to come in the same exact form. If you don't like public speaking, that's okay. If you can bring yourself, if you can bring something to the table, don't be a potted plant, is what my boss always said. If you're in a meeting and you're not contributing, I'm not inviting you to the next meeting. There's no reason for you to be there. So those soft skills can sometimes outweigh and overshadow the hard skills that you actually bring. So quite frankly, to me, I think they're even more important than the technical skills you can bring to the table.
So I have a little bit of a disagreement with Don on the soft skills versus hard skills conversation. And I've actually had this conversation with the president of the Reserve Bank, who has recently retired. And that is, you know, one of the things about working in the organization where I last was is that we were pretty much staffed by many economists. How many of you are economics majors? Anybody here? Okay. So economists, as you know, see the world in a very interesting linear way, right? They pride themselves on being very, very strong analytically. And we have a lot of people like what you're describing in terms of very, very technically savvy, advanced degree people, all PhDs in the economics field, but many of them do not necessarily have great relationship skills. And so my conversation was centered around the whole notion of, and I said this to our president, what's soft about working with people? Because frankly, I think it's easier to work with analytics and with formulas because they are yes or no, right or wrong. When you're working with people, people are not black and white. People do not do what you tell them to do. People are unpredictable. And so my point of it is I think working with people actually is more difficult than hard skills on some level. So my point is, I think to your comment, I can't emphasize enough why it's so important for you to build relationships, why it's so important for you to understand technically. If you're going to start out in your career, yes, you're really going to be judged on what my dear friend Carla Harris, who's vice chairman at Morgan Stanley, talks about two types of currency as a way to manage your career. She talks about performance currency and relationship currency, right? Performance currency is what you're describing, which is do you do your job with excellence? Do people know who you are because you always deliver on time in an excellent fashion? That's a great way to carry you in the beginning of the year. In fact, years 0 to 3, I would say certainly that's what you want to emphasize. But as you move up in your career, and those of us who are more senior, they will tell you that the relationship skills, which is your relationship currency, becomes as important. And at some point when you start getting to VP and SVP and above, what ends up happening is that becomes a given. It becomes a given that you know how to do your job with excellence. So then the question becomes, how do you manage your peers? How do you manage your boss? How do you manage senior level people? And that's something that you have to look at as well. So I would say for those of you who are in school or just building your careers right now, spend some time not only doing your job with excellence, of course, learn the technical aspects of the job, but don't fail to also build relationships both across, down, and above.
I would also just add one more thing. When you're applying for a role and the role may require you to have certain technical skills, don't deter yourself from the role if you feel like your skills are not up to par with what you expect the role to be or what your colleague next to you, the skills that they may have. I've been in many debriefs where, there was one candidate that had amazing technical skills, but the soft skills just weren't there. And then there was another candidate who had really great soft skills, really great interpersonal communication skills, but maybe their tech skills weren't as strong. And so a lot of times I'm in debriefs where interviewers will say, I would much rather, come into the office every day and be greeted by this person or work with this person because they're more adaptable, they're more, welcoming to change, they're more willing to learn, they're a better team player. So just keep that in mind. Don't feel discouraged if your technical skills aren't where you'd like them to be.
Thank you. So I'm going to move the discussion just a little bit to be a little bit more personal, but I think it will resonate with many of you. By the way, by the show of hands, how many people in the room have mentors? Okay, good. So I want to talk about mentorship. So we know that many folks, probably most of you on the panel may have had mentors, but I want to know for the audience, who was your mentor and why did you choose them as a mentor? Because we may have mentors, but are they the right people to be mentoring you? And sometimes you got to look at that too, and I think the panel here will help us address that question. And I'm going to start down here with Diane.
Thank you. So yes, I've had a number of mentors during the course of my career, personal and professional. I'd say my first mentor was my mother. My mom was a real leader in the industry. She was one of the first African-American operating room nurses running the ORs in northern New Jersey in predominantly white hospitals. And so I learned a lot about leadership watching her. I would also say during the course of my professional career, I've had a number of mentors, and I will say to all of you, the majority of my mentors haven't looked like me. So don't necessarily shop for somebody who looks like you, because they have a perspective that can help you. I've had mentors that were fans and advocates, but I've had mentors that were naysayers. Why do you want to have a naysayer's point of view? Because you know what, you need to know that. There are people in the company that maybe don't agree with your point of view, maybe see parts of you that you are not aware of. We all have blind spots. You want to know what people think about you. So I think that, mentorship is very, very important. And again, I don't know, for those of you who have mentors, my kind of working definition of mentor is someone who you can tell almost anything to. That's the person who used to kind of say anecdotally, tell your dirty laundry to. Oh, I'm getting along with this person, oh, I can't stand that person, because that person hopefully is someone who can be trusted, and you can trust them, and they will keep it confidential. There is another role, though, that to me is even more important. That is your sponsor. Now, I don't know how many of you have sponsors, but as you go into companies, start thinking about that. Sponsor is someone who is senior to you, not necessarily your boss, but someone who will carry your paper into the room when it's time to start talking about promotion. So you want to have both. You want to have a mentor and you want to have a sponsor. And it's unfortunate, you can't always walk up and say, can you be my mentor? Some people do. People can, and they'll say yes. But more often than not, the sponsor is someone who will see your work. And that's where the performance currency comes in. Because he or she will see you and say, hey, this person has a lot of potential. We should think about keeping this person on our organization.
So I would say the best mentors that I've had throughout my career didn't even know they were mentors. And I think that's super important to be mindful of. So we all have formal mentorship programs, which serve its purpose, don't get me wrong, but I think the informal mentors where you can really build that genuine, authentic relationship with someone, and there's something about that someone, whoever that person may be, where you say, that's what I want to have, or that's what I want to be, and they have that quality, that skill, whatever it is that I'm pursuing in something that I want to reach out to. So again, you don't have to have a formal conversation for someone. If I start thinking about all the mentors in my head, those people, probably half of them know right now that they're a mentor because I probably said it in passing and they were like, oh wow, I'm your mentor, that's kind of cool. But the other ones, it's just someone that is there and someone that I emulate. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And the second thing, which is really important and more companies within, especially financial services, are paying attention to, a mentor does not need to be somebody more senior than you, right? They have reverse mentoring programs for a reason. And I think if you find someone, again, that has that skill or quality, some of my interns are mentors to me, right? Like some of the interns that come in with these different backgrounds and these different skill sets, and I need their knowledge and their wisdom to get a project done, they're mentoring me. Yes, they work in an organization that I run, but that means nothing, right? So take out the factor of, this is kind of who I am, people need to be a mentor to me if they're senior. No, right? Be humble about it and find people who can teach you. That's the point of a mentor, someone that can teach you, someone that can coach you, someone that can support you, and that does not need to be by any means someone that's above you.
So I would say I have two personal mentors, both of my parents, and I think just seeing their journey throughout their time in the United States has really shaped me to be the professional I am today. My dad immigrated from Colombia in the 70s, my mom from Ecuador in the 80s. So I think inadvertently they don't know that they're my mentors, but they are for me because I think all of the soft skills that I have, I emulate from them. As far as professional mentor, Jessica Palacios on the screen here, I would consider her my mentor. She may not know it, but she and I were connected because we both used to work at JP Morgan and now we're at BLACKROCK. She's on the campus team. It kind of happened just, very coincidentally that now she's head of campus, but she started as my mentor when she was working as an HR VP, which is kind of where I see myself in the next, 5-7 years as far as career trajectory is concerned. And so she and I shared a lot of commonalities, both personally and professionally. What I really value in my relationship with her is she's able to see a lot of my strengths and my areas of opportunity, and we have forums, one-on-ones where she tells me what I'm doing, really well, what I could work on, and I'm able to lean on her whenever I need advice, whenever I need, words of wisdom. And also, I would consider her a sponsor as well. She's given me a lot of opportunities for success and a lot of opportunities to grow, and a lot of platforms for me to present in front of senior leaders and all of that. And so I think because of my, relationship with her as far as mentor-mentee is concerned, I've been able to have that opportunity to, be able to speak in these forums where I might not have had the opportunity to do so otherwise. So I would say she's my mentor and my sponsor as well.
Great, thank you. Well, we've been getting some really good answers to the questions, and I'm pretty sure you guys have a lot that you want to ask of the panel, but I know we're not going to have enough time to do that right now. They're going to be around, and you'll be able to kind of stop them in the hallway and have the discussion. I do want to close the session out, but I want to close it with not a quote, which is what I normally use, but with a book. So I want to know from the panel, what book have you read that has supported your career? And can you recommend one that is open to all to grow by? Let me start by.
So I have more than one book, but I would say certainly one book that's been out for a very, very long time is called What Color Is Your Parachute? And it basically is a book that asks you about looking at your own sets of skills and figuring out what makes sense for you. The other books I would recommend to you is two books by Carla Harris. The first one is called Expect to Win. And you're talking to someone who's been very, very successful in the financial service area. Her book talks about Carla's pearls, and those are actually really good nugget guidelines for you thinking about moving forward. There is a book called Building a Strong Brand by Donald Miller. So I would recommend you do that too, because as you build your career, you are also building your brand.
Okay, thank you.
I would say the confidence code is one. It's primarily targeted at women, but I think anyone can benefit from some of the pearls of wisdom in it. It's just really about how women really come out of their shells and how it is important to have confidence. Sometimes even more so, they talk about like tensions of conflict where in times of conflict, men seem to have their voice raised, and then women kind of move away from that. And there's just scenarios that you really just are mindful of. How do you come across as confident? How do you not come across as like, I'm the only woman in the room, I have to come across as the loudest and the strongest, because that's obviously not necessary. But it just was really something interesting I read probably like 5-6 years ago at this point that someone gave me, and I really, really enjoyed it.
So I would recommend Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. This book changed my life as I entered corporate America, because prior to entering corporate America, I had worked, in settings where that I don't work in now. And so reading this book by Sheryl Sandberg really opened my eyes to just being a woman in the workplace. What tips do I need to be successful in the workplace, and how I can lean on, other individuals at the workplace, be it male or female, to be successful and to help my colleagues be successful as well. So I would really recommend this book. It changed my life.
And I have one book for you as well. It's called Execution. It's by Larry Bossidy, and it's the discipline of getting things done. So I think especially if those of you in the working place, you may want to definitely read that book. But in any event, I want to say thank you. Let's give our panelists a great big hand. I hope you got a lot out of the session. I think they had a lot to offer. I hope you wrote a lot of the information down. I think if you didn't get anything out of this, you got relationships. And I think you need to start them today. Even though Diane and myself are retired, we still have relationships inside, outside, and around. And so just because someone retires doesn't mean that they don't know people or they haven't left people behind that they've kept relationships with. So anyone you come in contact with, you should always try to build some relationship, whether it's a card, a call, and those people that may have an impact on your career, send them a little text message, a little email. Everybody has a mode of communication, and you need to understand what that is as well. Everybody doesn't like a text, everybody doesn't like a phone call, everybody doesn't like an email, but you need to find what that mode of communication is, because that's the way they want to be communicated with. When you go outside of that, sometimes then you kind of like, if you didn't get through, it's because you didn't communicate in the mode that they wanted you to communicate in. But I think you got a lot of good stuff today. Would you agree? Let me hear by a show of hands. Excellent. So anyway, we conclude this session, and I think we're going to move into the next session, but I just want to say thank you again. I hope you got the most out of everything that was here today. The panelists will be around if you have some additional questions that you'd like to ask them. They won't be here all day, so you may want to kind of reach the ones that can give you some additional assistance, or those questions that you didn't ask that you can ask while they're here. So have a great day, and I'm going to turn it over to Miguel.